Well, there's a lot of rut videos lately. I love rut strategy. I think you guys too. In fact, the numbers show that. I mean, just explosive numbers for views and comments, and I love that. This is the time of the year. Unfortunately, right around the corner, it starts dipping down. So I love feeding off this energy of you guys, and that'll carry out through January, and it dips down on the channel sometime in April, that activity. But there's something whitetail happening all the time. We're just getting back from a pre-rut hunt. It's October 28th, and did have a 2-year-old 8-point go by. Didn't see the big monsters we're after. And that's not uncommon in the pre-rut. I'm looking forward actually to tomorrow morning, the 29th of October. Real good morning hunt. Really good morning hunt on October 30th, the 31st. That's when I've shot a lot of big bucks around that time, and really looking forward to this pre-rut time. Pre-rut though is a little bit different than the peak rut. Peak rut, you know what, like I said, we have all these rut videos out right now. I can't miss the peak rut, and we'll talk about the post rut in a little bit too. But the peak rut, you know, we've talked about the roller coaster of opportunity throughout November. End of October, we talked about the signing phase, pre-rut, rut lockdown, peak rut, post rut, and then secondary rut. Peak rut though, that's where dreams are made. That's where you have to spend time in the woods. You know, right now you get a limited evening opportunity in the pre-rut. It's going to be exploding in the morning pretty soon. Hit the rut lockdown when a lot of bucks are starting to breed does. That's still a week away, maybe even shorter, 5-6 days away. But once we get in the peak rut, and I'm gonna give states, people always say, why don't you say my state ever? Well, I try to pick different states, and you know, I can't remember them all, but I try to give a balance where the peak rut's going to begin, at least peak rut activity, where bucks are actively chasing, seeking, they're on to their second doe, third doe, they're really cruising around, they're even leaving their property, their core area, they're going to a non-core area. I've shot a lot of bucks that didn't live on the land I hunted, but specifically was going in to hunt those bucks because they lived a mile away, and I knew during the peak rut, for example, in southern Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, New York, that I could get a chance on those bucks the 6th through the 16th, 15th, 17th of November. If you go down to Missouri, Tennessee, Arkansas, West Virginia, maybe even over into Oklahoma, if you look at that line down there south, then you're looking about a week to 10 days after that period. So anytime from the 10th to the 25th, 22nd, Kansas would be in that realm too, where that peak rut activity is starting more the 15th of November instead of the 6th of November or 5th of November. So think about those dates, try to relate that to where you're at. And if you're in the South, in those little, you know, wacky states where you have that random rut that seems to take place at just about any time for about 3 to 4 months, then you can expect that activity to start happening soon. And then I focus on those really cold front days in hunting fresh sign. Peak rut though, I want to focus on 3 things with a peak rut. I love bedding areas in the morning and middle of the day. It's where bucks are actively cruising between their own bedding areas, between doe bedding areas. And what's nice about those bedding areas is a lot of times they're a long ways off food. You can get around those food sources, whether it's a clear cut on public land or a big ag field or food plots on private land, and you're making your way back to those bedding areas and waiting for those deer to come back to you. A lot of my bucks, we talked about some of those bucks that are in the garage right now. We're in the process of moving. We need to hang these bucks. We have a big wall for that. A lot of those bucks were shot back near their bedding areas and going a long ways out of my way to get to there, and then waiting for those bucks to come back. And I'm not shooting them until that sweet spot between, say, 9 and 11, 8 and 11, 8 and 10, about an hour after daybreak, hour and a half after daybreak. In fact, I've had many mornings where I just think, boy, this morning kind of stinks. I'm not seeing much activity, and then all of a sudden, there are those bucks, and they're an hour and a half to 2 hours after daybreak, sometimes an hour, up to 3 to 4 hours after daybreak, and that's a real sweet spot for those bucks getting back to their bedding areas after playing around in the open food sources and fields, and then making their way back and actively searching for does, being really ruddy in their own areas, and really moving a lot. So those morning areas, focusing on those bedding areas. Middle of the day, you can't be on a food source in the middle of the day. It's very rare that a mature buck will poke his head out into a food source, especially the larger it is. And you think about those food sources, most of the time they're far away from bedding areas. So I really like to be back in the thick of things still in the middle of the day. A lot of times I'm scoring the peak rut. Unlike the pre-rut where I'm looking mostly at mornings, a little bit in the evening, I'm focusing on the peak rut in the morning, midday, and evening. And I want to score each one of those time periods. I find that I have a really good score if I'm sitting in the middle of the day where I'm at during the morning hours. Those bucks are still in between bedding areas. They could bed nearby, get back up, actively start searching for does. And that's that peak rut midday movement that is very random, but at the same time can be very powerful. If you're near that evening food source, you're probably not going to have great luck in the middle of the day. I love those thick areas, middle of the day, that X of movement between bedding and feeding, well back into the cover areas, maybe some funnels where you're on the inside of a woodlot corner where you have field outside and you're in the inside where that woods makes a V. You're hunting in that inside corner we talked about in a bow hunting tip several videos ago. Love those funnels of movement. You have a thick brushy line next to a river bottom, food source on the outside, and you're hunting on the river bottom, not on the food source. An area where you could expect a buck not only to cruise by in the morning, midday, but also in the evening as he's cruising downwind of the food source. He's cruising between food sources in the evening. The bottom line, you're back in the cover. Doesn't hurt to hunt those food sources in the evening, but definitely a different or a different stand location than the morning and midday hours. And I think that's where people make a mistake during the peak rut. They think that bucks are going to be flying around everywhere, and that's just not true. I find the mature bucks are more towards and cheating towards those bedding areas in the morning. You have to have a stand in the cover in the middle of the day, and then a food source related stand in the evening. Now, it's not to say you're not hunting a stand that's on a food source in the evening. It might be better to actually be hunting a stand that's on the way to a food source. And what's cool about those on the way to food source stand locations is if they're far enough back in the cover and they do relate to doe bedding in some way, then you might find that that's that perfect X of movement that features an all-day stand where you can sit in one location. And those all-day stand locations, again, I almost make fun of it a little bit, but I'm going hardcore tomorrow. Here's my day pack. I'm going in one stand and sitting all day. Well, folks, most of the time you're sacrificing 1/3 of your day or 2/3 of your day because it's a rotten stand location. Say if it's a great stand location for morning, it's probably a poor stand location for evening and maybe even the middle of the day. If it's an outstanding food source evening stand location during the peak rut, it's probably a poor middle of the day and morning stand. Very few stands are all-day stands. It sounds cool, looks cool to get your stuff together and say I'm going hardcore and going all in, when you might be a lot wiser and a lot smarter hunter to focus on bedding areas in the morning, those extra cruising areas during the middle of the day, and then that ultimate food source stand in the evening. A lot of times that doesn't necessarily mean sitting in 3 stands throughout the entire day. It means making sure that you're covering your bases for, is this a good morning stand? Is this a good evening stand? A lot of times you find they are separate stands, and that's how you can navigate through the peak of the rut and make sure that you're hunting each one of those phases of the day, whether it's morning, midday, or evening, and maximizing the time that you have in the woods for the peak rut. Hey, sorry to interrupt this video, but my web class series is finally begun. How to design your whitetail property is on my website, and there's a link in the description. Please check it out. You know, it does sound good. Just go out and sit in the woods. The bucks are going to be flying around. But even during the peak rut, it not only pays to pick the time of the day that your tree stand is actually slanted towards. It's also a really good idea to make sure that when you're hunting your best stands, now maybe you only have one stand. In that case, just go out and hunt it. I've had some great rut cruising stands out in public land where you could pound those every day because you might be hunting a buck that's traveling from 2 miles away through that major funnel of movement between clear-cut areas, creek systems, river bottoms, cross saddles, ridges, whatever it might be, but they're coming from a long ways away, so you're not burning out just a core buck that you're after. But when it comes to managing the peak rut, not only are you looking at each phase of the day and scoring the day, you're scoring the day by weather phase or weather events too. If the prediction is warm, hot, and windy, maybe choose a stand off to the side, maybe not go into that best bedding area stand in the morning. Make sure the conditions match the quality of the stand, the quality of the conditions, match the quality of the sit and the potential sit, making sure that you're not blowing out a high quality potential stand with a low quality potential day. maybe hunt 10 days straight, whatever, it doesn't really matter. The bottom line is learn to manage your sits, whether it's time of the day or quality of the day. Watch that weather, watch HuntCast 2.0 from HuntWise. Again, that's a prediction model that's from my head into that app, and those are the days that I would predict for you. And even when you see a little bump in from a 5 to 15% day and it jumps up to a 30 to 50% day, those are those days you want to key on. It's not a 100% day, but it's those top 25 days of the season that you can't miss out, let alone those days that are 60, 70, 80, and 90%, even 100%. A lot of those 70 to 100% days are those top 10 to 12 days that you can't miss all years. Focus on your best stands. Focus on your best stands for the most appropriate time of the day, and you'll be navigating the peak rut successfully this year and beyond. And hey, it's what dreams are made of. It's happening right now. Good luck in the woods, stay safe, and I can't wait to hear about the big bucks that you shoot down in the comments below. Little bucks, first buck, first year ever. Love to hear it all. Thanks a lot for watching.